Woo.
Welcome to Night Talks, the University of Florida's College of Journalism and Communications talk show, produced by students for students. I'm Maria Fernandez, and I'm a senior studying telecom and sociology. Our guest today is Julie Donaldson, who anchored with NBC Sports, including for NBC Olympic broadcast. And now she's the senior vice president of media and content with the Washington Commanders. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
How do you feel like experiences that you had on campus at the time contribute to your career today?
The biggest thing I would say about my time at college, because a lot of it is you really just kind of need some hands-on experience, which is what the university offers you, even with things along these lines, because that's what's going to really matter when you go out trying to get that first job. But I'd say probably my time here is it just kind of teaches you how to go about your day, how to be an adult, how to be a professional, how to make sure you're on time, how to hold your own self accountable for things. And I think that was one of the best and biggest lessons. My time at UF was a lot of fun as well. And it's great that they give you the opportunities to actually live out what your dreams are, which sets that foundation for what ultimately comes.
So you definitely think that your time here prepared you well?
100%. Oh, yeah. And it still resonates to this day. The relationships that you build, I think that's one of the biggest things in life. And anytime I'll see a fellow Gator around as well, they're always willing to kind of help and look out for you and see in any ways that they can kind of assist you. So it sets the foundation for the practice skills of what you're going to be able to use when you do start looking for that job and starting your career, and those always just stick with you.
You were Miss Florida USA in 2000, and then you competed for Miss USA in 2001. Did those experiences overlap with what eventually is your career in sports journalism and on camera?
Well, I competed in Miss University Florida here and was like first runner-up. What it does is it teaches you how to present yourself. It teaches you how to work a room and network and make connections, and that really kind of helped pay off when it did come to me trying to land something. From the people that I met that were from all over the country and in different areas, I could then reach out and say, hey, do you remember me from my time at Miss USA? I'm looking for a job. And if anything else, they would take the phone call. But it really kind of taught you a little bit about how to be on stage and, how that camera is going to interact with you and what you're trying to say. So I wouldn't say it necessarily did anything with my sports journalism career, but they are lessons that I definitely learn and use to this day.
I know that also in 2003, you hosted the Miami Heat TV. How did you get your foot in the door for that opportunity?
Out of college, I went straight down to Miami because that's where I had connections from my competing in Miss Florida. So I was able to get an internship after having graduated. But it was somebody who helped put on the Miss Florida USA pageant. They said, you can come on it and you can learn. So I was interning at the local television station down there in the entertainment department. And through that, I would go out, and a lot of them, like some of the interviews you'd have to do down in Miami, might be a little bit late in the night, at midnight or so, when they're coming or going to a premiere or whatever. And I was willing to stand out there while the reporter, I do not mind and respect this at all now, they're at home sleeping. And I'm like, sure, I'll go out and do the interviews. So I kind of learned a little bit of hands-on experience with that and how to write a package, which at the time might take me 5-6 hours. And I'd ask them, I was like, how long should it take you? And they're like, oh, it takes us 30 minutes. So I was like, oh my goodness, I got a lot of catching up to do. But it was great because the packages I would actually write, I would see go on air in Miami, which is not necessarily a small market. So it was really kind of this foundation of live experience, but I wasn't getting paid for it. So since I wasn't getting paid for it, I had to find other ways to supplement what I needed for my rent and for my cell phone. And I just did odds and ends jobs. Anything that I could to get into the business. I was producing for the Discovery Health Channel. I would be hosting programs that would air on health programs. I got this job through a modeling agency, which I hated, but one day work paid my bills, to do this Miccosukee sports wrap. And it was with the local sports guys down there, Joe Rose and Kim Camper, which were doing sports anchors down at the local stations. And it was the intros and outros, and it paid me $50. And the next day I go, you need to give me a raise. So they gave me $100. And then I said, I want to do more. I want to do segments. So they allowed me to go out and produce segments where I'd learn how to play third base with Mike Lowell or learn how to be the enforcer on the hockey rink, you know. These stories all over the place, from, you know, kite surfing to, you know, playing frisbee golf. Whatever story I could come up with, they allowed me to go out and execute. And it became a job that paid me, I think, like $40,000 a year, which out of college was more than enough to pay for my bills. Through that, I also then got an interview for the Miami Heat job. And at the time, I honestly didn't even really want it. I was up for another job at the CBS station to be a reporter. But the woman that did get that job had 6 months of live experience that I did not have. So she got the job, I got the Miami Heat job. And it ended up being one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. But I think it's just a lesson. Sometimes something you may not want because you had different aspirations, if you go in with the right attitude, can be incredibly rewarding and help you advance even further than maybe something else. I came across so many amazing people in that job. I was there for 2.5 seasons, got an agent, and through really that job, it propelled me to New York City. So yeah, I skipped a few markets along the way, and it was all from a job that I didn't necessarily initially want.
Could you tell me what are some of the best stories that you've gotten to cover in your career, like your favorite answers, your favorite experiences?
When I joined the Miami Heat, they then went and drafted Dwayne Wade, then they got Shaquille O'Neal, and I left before LeBron, you know, returned in the Power Ones. But I still was close enough to the team to be able to have connection there. So I'm in New York City and I'm covering the Knicks. We're at Madison Square Garden, and the Miami Heat come into town. Because of my connection with them, I get an interview with Shaq. Now, mind you, I'm at a brand new startup network, Sportsnet New York. They hadn't even launched yet. So I did this interview, and it was in the bowels of Madison Square Garden. It's kind of dark. And Shaquille O'Neal is doing his pregame warm-up kind of routine. I don't know that this is what he does all the time by any means, but he's on this kind of like this jolly rig thing. I don't know what the proper terminology for it is, but it would put a whole bunch of stuff on and you could move everything around the arena. And he's doing sit-ups on it. Okay. And I'm doing the interview with him while he's doing sit-ups on this rig thing. And it was typical Shaq for you. But it also goes to show that through networking and through the relationships that I had built, I was able to have that access that no other reporter was able to get. You know, I should go back and try and find where that was, because that one kind of stands out. But it's in those moments of something that's unexpected. I'm thinking I'm just going to do an interview with him, and this is what it became. So you have to kind of adjust and be able to have fun with it and move on the fly with whatever that opportunity is. And that's where, to me, some of the greatest moments of my career kind of come out. This kind of stands out to me as a lesson I often use. It was 2008, so the Celtics were on their way to winning the championship. Now, I was in their locker room when they won the championship. It was great. Kevin Garnett is grabbing my microphone, and, you know, champagne's flying everywhere. It's another amazing moment in my career. But leading towards that, I was the third, you know, I was the reporter. So I was the third from, you know, the number 1 and 2 on the NBC station there. Reporter anchor would be anchoring, the number 2 would go out to do the big story, and then I'd take whatever was left. So they go to the Celtics, and I had a little bit of attitude because I got sent to the Patriots. Not much was going on in the NFL at that point. Mm-hmm. So I go out and with a little bit of an attitude that I should be on the Celtics beat. You know, I've been there daily, and they come and take the big day. And the way it kind of went at the time is the anchors or the cameras would do the interviews first, and the beat reporter writers would go after for the interview. And Tom Brady's talking. And I'm the only camera there because everybody's at the Celtics. So I basically get a one-on-one interview with Tom Brady. And I'm thinking, you little brat.
That's technically the third reporter, and
right?
You got the Tom Brady one.
Here you are, you know, and wherever that went, but it just kind of was a lesson, again, of, you know, you go into any story and you want to maximize it. I didn't know I was going to get Tom Brady that day, and I probably would have prepared totally different had I thought I would. And maybe I might have been nervous because I was still young in my career, but that's what makes this business, I think, so entertaining and engaging and just rewarding at the end of the day.
When you went to work for Sports New in New York and then at the network's inception, as a reporter there, what types of stories and productions were you involved in?
In New York City?
Yeah.
You do everything. New York City has the Yankees, the Mets, the Jets, the Giants, the Rangers, the Islanders, the Devils, just for the professional teams. And then you have all the colleges thrown in on top of that and all the special events that will happen. So you're constantly on the go, and your assignment shifts constantly, and you can think you're going out to cover a Giants practice, and then news might change and break with the Knicks, and you have to shift your day. So I think as a reporter, when you're always on the road, it's how can you prepare yourself for whatever that day calls. And in New York City, it's always going to be something different. So you kind of have to be able to be well adversed in everything that's going on in the city. So you find your ways to kind of work your positioning, to assert yourself into it, and to make sure that you do the job that you were sent out for.
And then later in 2008, you become a sports reporter for WHDH-TV and the NBC affiliation in Boston. What was the thing that you enjoyed and maybe things you didn't enjoy about the position? And then I'm assuming that covering the Red Sox was a huge perk of that position in Boston.
Yeah, when I went to Boston, everybody's like, and I'm covering a Red Sox game, like, can you believe the media attention here? I'm like, I just came from New York. Like, there's a team called the Yankees up there. They've got A-Rod, Derek Jeter, they were legit. But, you go to the Red Sox, you got Big Papi. And so it equally was an amazing team to cover. Spring training every year I went, and I went for New York as well, the Mets and the Yankees down at spring training. But Boston is a sports town. In New York City, you have everybody, there's always something else going on. And while they love their teams, there's always another distraction. In Boston, sports will lead the newscast almost any given night because that's just, they love their teams. And there was definitely great opportunities for me to take another step because I always wanted the anchor desk. And while reporting in New York was a first time for me, I was not going to get the anchor desk in New York City. So in Boston, at least I had the opportunity by being their number 3 to on weekends, and if somebody was out, I could fill in on the anchor desk and get those experiences and those reps as well.
And then after your job in New York in 2010, you began working for NBC Sports, which is a big position, I assume.
Well, what I did with NBC Sports is it was in Washington, D.C., but it was the anchor desk. So I was anchoring the 6, 10, and 11.
So you got your break. You finally got the job you always wanted.
I did. And I love the anchor desk. I loved everything about the studio, about the lights, about going live. It's something that I really, really enjoyed. It was a place where I just got to build a good life. I really enjoyed those that I worked with as well. And through that, I got to do Olympics. I would go up and I did the anchor desk for Olympics. So it's a little bit of a cop-out. I wasn't like in Rio or in Pyeongchang or in Sochi or in London, but I was able to do all the updates for all of the events that went on. The challenge with that is, for one thing, you're working 21 straight days, 12-hour shifts, if not longer, and you're going in for a lot of them. I wouldn't go in, and I'd go in at midnight to be able to get my hits going up and running at the time, because there's different time changes. But I had to do the results of every single event, which is a lot of different names you have to say. And within a 5-minute hit, I might say like 20 different names of those from the Netherlands, from Japan, from just all over, and having to enunciate them properly was always a big challenge. Award-winning productions, and to have been a part of that was really cool. So it's just, it was also great. It got me back to New York City once in a while, doing the updates for NBC Sports. But it did it. It got me the anchor desk, which I enjoyed.
Has it been hard in the sports world that has predominantly been like male dominated for so long? Do you ever feel like, especially with your pageant background, that you were hired for looks before talent, or that you were overseen?
Well, that's where you work hard and you prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And then if you do mess up or you don't know something, you learn it and you work hard to figure it out. Like, I was telling you, hockey was not my thing necessarily. I'm live on air and I've got this minute 10 hockey highlight and I get lost 20 seconds in, which makes for a very long, uncomfortable finish to the highlight that I didn't know where to pick it up. I didn't know the players. The names are crazy. I didn't understand it. And it was mortifying. And my boss is like, come in, we need to stay after and we're gonna go over hockey highlights so you know how to pick it up. And you have to study it. And if there's something that you don't know, don't be afraid to go to whomever. And there's plenty of times I'll even still to this day go to my analysts and be like, okay, why was that not a call? Like, educate me, because I couldn't see it live, and even watching it back, I'm not understanding. And more than likely they'll help you and they'll respect that. But certainly, I think a mistake, and maybe not as bad so much now, but a mistake by a woman compared to a man, if it's the same mistake, it's going to resonate differently for a female in this business. But I think we're seeing a lot more women expected in these roles. So I think there's a little bit more grace, but most certainly, like, you know, it is a visual world, but people are also want to be able to hear what you have to say. So it has to be backed up. 100% has to be backed up.
You mentioned now that you're working with the Washington Commanders. How did you come to work with this NFL team? Like, it's such a big position. Did you come in with the position that you currently have, or did you work your way up?
Oh yeah,
within
no.
the team?
So I spent quite a few years when I went to DC in the anchor desk, and throughout that I challenged myself and I asked my bosses to give me shows that I hadn't necessarily had experience on, so I could grow and learn and work with analysts where it's not scripted, it's not on the prompter. You just have to know what you're talking about and where you want to take them and what you're trying to get within a live television setting. So I challenged myself to get those shows. I got the Training Camp Daily Show. Then I would pick up it was at the time, like the Redskins Daily Show, the weekly show. So when it came an opportunity for them to say, we need somebody to step into a position to take over of what, another gentleman had held for over 20 years, because there's only 32 of these jobs in the NFL. They're typically, was the first and still the only female to have a full-time position in the radio booth. They don't come open very often. So when the opportunity came, I said, well, who knows the team better than anybody in this marketplace, and that we trust and we respect and we know would be a good person to fit into this organization that needs a culture change, that needs good leadership. And my reputation from that, they said, let's call Julie. But they knew that they needed somebody that could not just lead one within the department, but within the franchise as a whole. So they gave me the opportunity to come in and be a senior vice president and to have a say not within the department, but within the franchise on what they need and where we can go, and kind of help steward them into a better place where employees felt supported and respected, male and female alike, because it was a franchise that was going through a lot of turmoil and transition, and they needed to definitely make some changes, and I was the first representation of that. So I'd always paid attention to, throughout my stops in Miami, New York City, and Boston, to what made a good boss, what did I like from them, how did they get the best out of me, how did they interact with my fellow coworkers as well, and lead a room and really get a great product on the air. So I think throughout that I kind of developed a lot of leadership skills that I get to apply now and learn as I grow that aspect of my career.
What are the specifics of your job as Vice President of Media and Content?
So I kind of oversee all of our broadcast. So that'd be that linear, what we do, and we stream digitally on our social media platforms. The radio broadcast, which we also stream as well, and we're looking to kind of break those into two separate entities as well, as kind of we're trying to figure out now how we can make that happen. I hired all of the analysts that I work with and work with me. The team that works with me, I hired my staff, and I also kind of advise our team president and some of the other peers that I have at the senior level leadership on, decisions that impact the direction we're going as a franchise, how things are going to land in the marketplace, anticipate needs, and anticipate issues of where we can improve. So it's kind of an all-encompassing job, but it's incredibly rewarding as well.
Sounds like a lot. I'm really glad you're not a one-man team. How much studying did you have to do coming into this position on the team's history? Was it something that you had to research, or was it something that by being in the team job, that job, that you got the knowledge? Yeah,
I still, at times can definitely, there's always more to learn. I'll just say that. There is always more to learn. And I think the biggest thing too is, I'm not going to be an expert, but I know how to get that out of experts. I know what experts I can go to learn more. But I've been around the team enough to know our legends, to learn our legends, to be around the players, which kind of resonates. And, I have institutional knowledge that a lot of others come in may not have if they're coming from out of town, because I have been in the marketplace for a while to understand kind of what resonates with the fan base, why the team is so special. And as we were celebrating our 90th season, we brought back one of the main reasons we have 3 Super Bowls, which are the Hogs, which is the offensive line, and I get to talk to all of our legends. And there's certain things that I may know about them, but then I also have a great producer that can feed me things if I'm live on air, which you often are, and you may not necessarily know. And I like to try and make as best I can my questions be as specific as I can at times, because then that just, you get a better answer if you're, whomever you're talking to, say, what do you remember most about that Super Bowl? Okay, going to get a financier. But if you can say, what was it that allowed you to score the most points ever in Super Bowl history in 2 quarters when you were behind, something that gets a little bit more out. And you have to rely on others for that. That's why we have researchers and why you have great producers. And, sometimes they'll give it to me in my IFB. At times they'll give it to me through, a text message as you're live on air. And especially at times when I'm doing the interviews, you don't necessarily always know who's coming up next. So I may have an idea of who's coming up, a list of questions, the stats of what stood out for them, memorable moments throughout their career, but then that may totally shift. And so that's the joys of live. You're shifting and adjusting on the fly, but a lot of it comes to what you're studying, your prep work. And then others, support staff. You don't do this alone.
You became the first full-time on-air female member of an NFL broadcasting team. What does that mean to you?
It means it is now an option for women to have that they didn't think they had before. I wasn't even at the time going to take the job. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, nobody's done it. You're asking me something that's absolutely insane. It's crazy. You're desperate. I'm not doing this. And they said, no, you can do it. Let's form it into what works for you. Let's put it into what plays to your strengths and what you excel at. And then you hire the team that's around you. And when I kind of stepped back in that aspect and said, okay, do I know the team? Yes. Do I know the game? Yes. Can I tell stories? 100%. Well, that's all it is within the booth. And it's just at a bigger, higher, more profile role for one team per se. When I get messages from countless of women being like, oh my gosh, I was always listening to the radio, I was always mid, I'm like, wait, that's a female voice throughout the whole game, not just in a sideline position for 30 seconds coming in and out of break or during a timeout. It's my voice is one of the dominant voices throughout the entire broadcast from beginning to end. And they're like, that's pretty cool. Now, because they love the game, they're like, this is just another door that's open that I didn't think was before. You have to have, first off, belief in your capabilities and what you're good at. And you have to hold true to that and constantly working to get better. But there's going to be times where you may doubt yourself or you feel like you're not going to be good enough or you're not qualified enough. And that's where you need to have people say, you can do this and here's how you're going to do it. You can excel at this and we're going to help you. We're going to put, make sure you have the right researchers, make sure you get the right training. But don't let an opportunity that you didn't think you could do or you weren't expecting hold you back from a position where there's only one of 32. There's only going to be 31 other of you doing this job. And even then, for me, nobody else is doing the job that I'm doing. I'm holding a one job position only that exists. And I certainly hope that changes, going forward. But a lot of, again, these positions, people take them, they hold them for 20 years.
Yeah, and it's what we were talking about earlier, how you can have maybe an end goal, but the path is always unprecedented. Yeah. We even see it with streaming services versus traditional cable in the media. As someone who's been in the industry for so long and in the sports world, how do you see sports broadcasting evolving in the future?
I mean, streaming's huge, and we're trying to figure it out because I worked at a regional sports network for a while, and it just got sold. So now I'm trying to figure out my position, where does my programming now live? Because it used to live on this one platform. The new platform, it's adjusting, shifting, and changing, and it won't be monetized the same. So because folks are not necessarily having a cable box. And even if they do, they might not have the bundle that has the network. So regional networks, a lot of them are just losing money. So they're trying to get out of the business. But that's where a lot of your shoulder programming may live. Even on linear, a lot of them have a hard time, being able to get the correct sponsorship for it to make it profitable. So it's where is that? And that's because people aren't consuming necessarily linear. It's where is the next generation going to get their news and their information and how are they consuming it? Are they watching a whole half-hour show? Probably not. They might go in and watch maybe a clip, get the highlights and they're getting out. They don't necessarily watch all the analysis around it. Or maybe they do and they're watching, we can see, you can watch the metrics will tell you in the streaming. If we do a 20-minute show, they may bail after, 6 minutes, they may bail after 11. And that's actually
they stay for a while, yeah.
If they stay for 6 minutes, that's a lot. That means you had some pretty compelling content in those 6 minutes. So I think we're trying to figure out how is the next generation, your generation, consuming media and information and shows and programming? What platform is that on? And a lot of it is, folks want it for free. Well, that's not sustainable. I can't support a department if I'm not being able to get the right sponsorship within that. So we're finding ways to integrate sponsorship on that and be able to, get the right support from it, be it if it's on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or a streaming service, any different outlet. We're still just kind of trying to sit back and wait and see where that lands. Or maybe it's an outlet that, or a means that we don't even really know it kind of exists yet. So I think we're still trying to figure that out. In the process, it's a matter of saying, okay, where are those numbers coming from now, and how can we create content specifically for that one platform? Because every platform is, it comes across different. People like to sit there originally like, let's take one picture and put it on across all the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and they just don't resonate the same. You're not going to get the same engagement. Yeah. So we have to take the content, slice it up, dice it up, reshape it, remold, edit, whatever way we can to try and maximize
to each
it.
platform. Yeah, short form is definitely taking over. Lastly, what advice would you share with women and everyone who's aspiring to be in sports media industry?
A lot of it is resiliency. You're not going to get, any job you apply for, it's not always going to be a yes. Every time you go to get an interview, it's not going to be a yes. I have had more no's than ever yeses. I've had more, plenty of failures and mistakes. I'm constantly learning and growing, even at this level. And I pray that never changes, and it shouldn't if you want to stay in this business. But I think you have to have a certain amount of resiliency, because it's not necessarily, even at times, who's the most talented, but it's like who can stay with it. And if that's your passion and it's what you believe is kind of like your calling and your path in your life, like you have to take control and ownership of that. So if somebody else is telling you no, like, okay, let's go to the next until we do get that yes. And we get the yes, maybe it's not necessarily in the sport or the city or the job or the role that you necessarily want. Maybe you don't get to start out as a reporter, but you're logging tape or you're running camera, you're doing the cables or you're doing lighting, but you're in the room. And once you're in the room and once you're through the door, you can turn that into anything you want. You have the opportunity to meet whomever it is that has the job that you want and ask questions. So you're constantly saying, hey, how can I get better? How can I get to this position? And you never know when that opportunity may come. You never know what that can lead to, but I think the right attitude goes a long way. And when you do get knocked down, when you do get a no, saying, all right, let's just, on to the next, somewhere there's going to be a yes. And all I need is one yes to be able to get going. And that one yes will just kind of keep leading you to what ultimately, hopefully, is an incredibly rewarding career and into a job where you're doing what you love on a daily basis. Part of it, too, is you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like you have to step outside what you know to learn something new, to grow, to get to that next step.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for your insight, your knowledge, your advice. We appreciate it a lot. And thank you so much to the viewers for joining us. Until next time, good night.